This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod.
Hello and welcome to episode 394 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's upcoming Bundesliga game against Mainz 05, and we will preview Tuesday's Champions League clash against Ajax. For all that and more, joins me Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I'm doing fine. Enjoying the first days of autumn, my favorite season in the year, or as you are now almost obliged to say, fall.
Well,
because the leaves fall.
Right.
Guess.
Yes, that's why. Yeah, it's I think 25 degrees Celsius here right now. So it's not really
not very autumnal.
No, not at all. That's what I'm trying to say. But I've heard the weather forecast here in Philadelphia says it's going to get cooler by Sunday. I know, very interesting for the millions of listeners who've tuned in just for the weather forecast of Philadelphia. But what else is there to talk about? Oh yeah, right. Dortmund will play against Mainz on Saturday. Mainz right now are 9th in the Bundesliga. They have 3 wins to their name against Leipzig, Fürth and Hoffenheim. They have 1 draw, a scoreless one against Freiburg, and 3 losses against Bochum, Leverkusen and Union Berlin. They've scored 7 goals in 7 games, and they've only conceded 5 goals, which is why they're so relatively high up in the table. Their top scorer with 2 goals to his name, so it doesn't really mean much, is Ingwertsen, and the most assists with also 2 assists to his name is Onisivo, so also that does not mean much. So, obviously it's going to be a very difficult game. Lars, do you think that having, I think Sascha Flick said today, 60,000+ people in the Westfalenstadion is a big helping factor now, opposed to the whatever was 25,000-30,000 beforehand?
Well, first of all, I think 60,000+ is a very optimistic viewpoint. Checking it earlier today on Thursday as we are recording it, didn't seem likely to me that they'll even scratch that number. So unless there's a lot of people making fairly swift decisions of going into the stadium on short notice on Saturday or whenever, I think it's not going to be as many, and still no organized support, I think, by the ultra groups. So I'm not sure how much of a factor it's really going to be. But then again, I think looking back at the game against Augsburg ahead of the international break, I believed even then that because of the lack of organized support by ultra groups and whatnot, that the stadium wouldn't be too much of a factor. But I think actually the spark flew between the pitch and the stands, and the same can obviously happen again against Mainz. It's an opponent that, even though they are quite solid at the back, as you alluded to earlier, Dortmund are very much expected to beat at home, and if that shows itself to be true, I think once again the players can ignite the fans and vice versa. So I think even if it's still not nearly normal circumstances in the Westfalenstadion, it's still going to be nice to see a much fuller stadium than even against Augsburg, and I'm pretty sure that with a few more weeks it's going to be full again, or as full as it gets under current laws in Germany, or rather North Rhine-Westphalia, where Dortmund is situated.
Right. So Borussia Dortmund have switched rules from quote-unquote 2Gs to 3Gs, which basically means before it was with the 2Gs, either you're vaccinated or you're recovered from COVID, and the third basically means you can either be vaccinated, recovered, or just tested. So the third G means get tested. Lars, what's your opinion on that, if you even want to opine on the decision by the club and the ensuing criticism?
I mean, I think it's obviously a little bit hypocritical because Hans-Joachim Watzke kind of anointed himself the champion of the vaccinations as the number one tool to get back to normalcy, which I think most of us are enlightened enough to understand is the correct logic. I certainly would advise the roughly 30% or not 30, probably more close to 20 or whatever percent of the unvaccinated population in Germany to rethink their stance. But I can also understand that Dortmund, being a club that is basically a business, has to take other considerations into account. And given that law permits them to go to the rules of 3G, as you explained earlier, I think I find it hard to kind of fault them for doing so, because as I said, it's allowed, and why should they hinder themselves in their capacity to sell tickets, which is ultimately a very important financial factor for a club with a huge stadium. So obviously, given the statements made by Watzke earlier in the year, it's a bit hypocritical, but I don't actually have too much of a problem with the actual decision, and certainly don't think it's like catering specifically to anti-vaxxers or whatever. I think it's not nearly as sinister as that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, just think of all the poor bratwurst that wouldn't get eaten if you exclude another 20,000 from that. But I'm hoping anyway that most people that are going are vaccinated anyway. I mean, makes your life a lot easier. Isn't it so that in Germany you have a vaccine passport thingy as a QR code that you can use? That seems very helpful.
You have both the paper shine. What's that in English?
I don't know. Just call it the note, I guess. The vaccine.
Yeah, the vaccination cards. I think is what you have in the US or whatever, and we also get. And even if you don't, my mother, for example, when she got vaccinated, that was very early on in the process because she's a health worker basically. So at that point, we didn't have any apps or whatever to show your vaccination status. So she automatically got sent the QR codes by the health authorities, which I thought was surprisingly modern for Germany. And,
I know.
And German internet habits and what have you.
Yeah, when my mom explained to me that she's just having this QR code on her phone and she's just using it to go everywhere, I'm like, that's surprising. First of all, it's surprising that this is happening in Germany because, usually we're like 8 years behind everyone else. But it's. I also think it makes the process around the Westfalenstadion much faster in terms of people actually getting into the stadium and, being confirmed as one of the 2 or 3 Gs for whatever is applied. So, one of the Gs that Dortmund are trying to reduce, obviously, is the Gegentore. I think with that, we can swing over to Dortmund's squad/injury malaise. At least Gregor Kobel is fit to play, as far as I know, because he did not travel to the Swiss national team because I think he had knee problems and something with his toes. So that should help. But Rafael Guerreiro, torn muscle fiber on the international trip, so he's definitely out. Akanji, I think, should be fine, but there's still a bit of a question mark. He is at least in training, and Marco Rose said it was looking good. And Thomas Meunier is also doubtful. He has toe problems and he had to abort training during the week, so it's probably more of a no. Otherwise, I think Reina is still out. That's not cool. Dahoud is definitely going to be out as well with his knee ligament injury. What else do we got here? Hazard, he has entered training on Wednesday, so there's still a question mark behind him. Mouret is back on a training ground, but obviously still very far away from actually playing. Zagadou has been back in full team training for a week. And of course, I didn't forget him, no. Erling Haaland is also doubtful. He is a bit touch and go, might feature only on the bench and then get subbed on later. There's obviously a lot of names I just rattled through, and I'm not entirely sure if I have a complete list here. What do you make of this jigsaw puzzle that Marco Rose has to solve now, sort of?
I wouldn't even consider it that. I mean, it's not like he has many options, which I guess in a puzzle is usually your problem, that you have too many pieces. In this instance, it's more a case of having very few pieces and trying to make the best with them.
Well,
so
I don't know how you puzzle, but I usually, when I buy a puzzle, it has the perfect amount of pieces. You just have to fit them together.
Yeah, but whenever you are looking for one piece, you have to find it in a large pile of pieces.
Right, but you don't have too many pieces. You're just missing the one you're looking for.
Whatever
I'm sorry, I didn't want
be,
this to escalate into a puzzling debate.
I mean, I've never puzzled in my life.
What?
Maybe. Why would I?
I don't know.
Maybe
Just
you
the
need
people
the
puzzle. I don't know.
Maybe you need the actual hands-on experience to fully grasp the concept of puzzling. But
yes, apparently.
To me, I mean, there's not many options for Rose to choose from. So, I mean, Nico Schulz is going to replace Rafael Guerrero on the left side if Akanji can't play, and I think they'll err on the side of caution because of the Champions League commitments in the next few weeks and cup games and whatever. It's probably going to be Emre Can, who played in the friendly against Paderborn during the international break and has been back in training for a couple of weeks prior to that, I think. If Meunier can't play, Marius Wolf, or indeed Can, if Akanji can play, would be your two options. And, the rest is basically the same as before the international break, I think. So,
Plus maybe Haaland.
But I'm pretty sure they're not going to risk anything with him. And looking back at things, when he first started at Dortmund and didn't really have the capacity to go for 90 minutes, if we remember how good he was off the bench, and that those qualities still remain. So I don't necessarily think that it's the worst idea to have Erling Haaland on the bench, and if you don't need him, great, because he's certainly going to be even better with a couple more days of rest.
Yes, definitely. Did you watch Germany by any chance?
No.
Because I was going to ask how Marco Reus performed, but since you didn't, that's moot now. What I can report from the Mainz camp is that Hack is out after I don't know if he's recovering from COVID or is still not fit enough. Dominic Kor, your favorite player, he has a suspension after getting 2 yellows in the previous match against Union Berlin, and St. Just is also out with a shoulder injury, and the old Adam Scharley is out still, long-term injury I think he has. So not too many names there. Any key players for you in that Mainz team? I don't know what role Dominic Kor is playing, if it's an important one or not. What do you make of that? And any Mainz players Dortmund need to look out for, or do you think it's more of a collective thing that makes Mainz so strong under damn, now I forgot the name of the coach.
Bo Svensson.
Bo Svensson, there we go.
I mean, as for Kor being out, I think everybody's legs in Dortmund's attacking department are quite happy with that, because Kor is known to be a bit of a lunger into tackles and what have you. So Marco Reus certainly rejoicing at those news, I'm imagining. I seem to remember Jonathan Burkhardt, who's now the captain of Germany's under-21 national team, even though he's been a part of that team for what feels like 4 years now. It feels like he always plays well against Dortmund. I think he scored at least once against them as well. He's kind of that shifty, not really a striker, but playing up front type of guy that for example, Mats Hummels sometimes struggles with, because he just can't really get a hold of him, and while physically overpowering, of course, he's just not quick enough and loose enough in his hips and what have you to cover someone like that. So I think Burkhardt is a good player to look out for, having a decent game against Dortmund, or having those a couple of chances that can decide the shape of the game, especially early on. Mainz also have who was inarguably the best player in the second division over the last 2 years in Jae-Sung Lee, but he's not really hit the ground running at Mainz. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, whether there was an injury in preseason or whatever, because he's really way too good to not be a regular for Mainz. No disrespect to Mainz, but he's like really good, so I'm assuming he's going to have a breakout eventually. Yeah, and I mean, it's a lot of the same names that have played over the last few years at Mainz. I mean, Leandro Barreiro, pretty good midfielder. St. Just being out is quite big, especially if Haaland can play, because St. Just is one of maybe 2 or 3 defenders, Alphonso Davies being another one, that can actually hold Haaland's candle in a foot race.
Yeah, St. Just, if I remember correctly, has been heavily linked with Dortmund now.
Yeah, but I think that was more paper talk. In the summer, he was also linked with Leverkusen and a couple of English clubs. So he's definitely a good player. He debuted for the Dutch international team before the Euros. And what I was going to say is that he recently set the Bundesliga record for the fastest player measured in Bundesliga history, with the caveat that they only measured this since, I think, 2011. So at least in the last 10 years, nobody's been clocked faster than
That's still pretty good, considering, there were speedsters like Aubameyang, Davis, Haaland, etc.
And considering he's a centre half, like he's not, he can play on the right side of the fence, but he's not a hybrid player in the vein of Joel Feldman, just because we talked about him before the show.
Right.
He's a real centre back who's just blazingly quick. So if Haaland can play, I think that's an obvious area of concern for Mainz, because they don't have anyone. I mean, Stefan Bell couldn't. Just to name the other guy of your meme duo, Robin Hack can't. I don't know how anyone will be able to run with Haaland, which is obviously something that Dortmund might be looking to exploit, even at home, where usually dominance on the ball means you don't get into too many opportunities to let Haaland and Malen and whoever else run at the defense.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at the last lineup, it was a 3-4-2-1. Something like that, with Bell as a left center half, and then St. Just in the middle, and then you had Widmer in the right center half, and then you had sort of Brozinski and Lukoki. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Anderson, I don't know. As the left wing back, and then you had the double pivot, if you will, of Barreiro and Core. So that's all split up. So I think Bo Svensson also has to jiggle around a couple of things to make this thing work. So I guess we can expect Niakate to play, and maybe David Nemeth. I don't know. He's a still fairly young Austrian player. So he came in. He's a center back, but I'm not sure if he actually played there. What the formation change was in that game, because I did not watch Mainz lose to Union Berlin. I think they even lost after being 1-0 up. So Mainz not in the best patch of form, but I feel like the international break always sort of dampens what form means, to be honest. I mean, they're winless in 3 games, 1 draw and 2 losses. After, I think they made it as high as 4th place in the league table at some point. So to me, sort of the surprise team, and weren't they on a ridiculous trajectory since Bo Svensson took over? Maybe they're regressing a bit to the mean, but it's too soon to say. But it's going to be the sort of game where Dortmund will be really asked to create something with the ball again, and something where I feel like Dortmund have struggled every now and then. I feel like it's been streaky in terms of chance creation from a heavily possession thing. I feel like there were games where they were quite comfortable in doing so. The Augsburg game, for example, I thought they created a lot of chances ultimately, but just didn't finish a lot. But there were also games where they really struggled, and I'm not quite sure what this is going to be, but I feel like Mainz will mostly sit and wait for the old sucker punch, and I'm not expecting a Mainz team that really proactively wants to have the ball and push Dortmund back into their own half. This is sort of only a thing that I see happening if Dortmund are riding a 1-goal lead, in the final 20 minutes or so. But otherwise, I expect a straightforward win from this Dortmund team. Whether they can pull it off or not is obviously entirely different. I'm also not quite sure how Dortmund will fare with Nico Schulz on the left and maybe Marius Wolf on the right. This can happen. Also, form-wise, would you start Emre Can ahead of Axel Witsel right now in holding midfield, or would you keep it like this? And would Julian Brandt be on the starting sheet for you again?
I mean, not to get back into puzzle pieces, but I'm not sure who the alternative to Brandt would even be, considering the absences continued of presumably Hazard and certainly Reina and Dahoud. So I'm pretty sure that Brandt is going to be in the starting lineup, and with good reason. I mean, he showed decent form ahead of the international break, and he's been in team training ever since returning from his non-vaccinated COVID absence early in the season. So if there's anyone who you would expect to start after an international break, it's someone like Brandt. As for Can versus Witsel, I mean, Can is, in my opinion, not a great fit whenever Dortmund play with a single defensive midfielder, or a solo sechs, as some would say in German, because he's... I just don't see he has the strategic thinking capabilities. I think he's better when he doesn't have to think too much about what he's doing, when he can just bulldoze over people, be that on the right wing, as he has done most often for Germany, I think, or, as the central midfielder, slightly ahead of Witsel or Dahoud, if Dahoud were available for this game. So I'm expecting it to be Witsel. So then you mentioned also Schulz and Wolf. I would argue that Wolf has been the positive surprise of the last block of games after the first international break, earning and really earning more playing time with each game, and not just being the last resort kind of sub late in the game. He initiated a very good move for the second goal against Augsburg, if I'm not mistaken, while playing on the left side. And then he deputized at right back when Meunier was out for like 5 minutes before Wolf had to be subbed off himself. But still, he's been decently surprising over the last few games, so I'm not necessarily worried about him replacing Meunier. I think that might just be a like-for-like replacement in terms of performance at the end of the day. And then Schulz, I think you could also argue that when he played earlier in the season, was doing better than what we had become accustomed to with Schulz at Dortmund. So I think the system Rose prefers kind of makes the role easier for a player like Schulz, who has great athleticism, whereas someone like Guerreiro, who doesn't have the athleticism but all the tactical and technical capabilities, might not be the greatest fit, but just be too good to not play all the time. I think Schulz is more a case of a player fitting the system very well, and the system perhaps masking some deficiencies.
Yeah, what I find interesting on the sort of sub between Guerreiro and Schulz is the role of Malen, because if Dortmund play in a normal setup, say with Haaland and Royce in behind, sort of, then Malen often drifts very wide to the outside just so Guerrero can cut inside, which he has successfully done quite often recently. And with Schulz, that's obviously not a thing. So that would mean that Marlon is more on the inside, and how that alters his play style and whether that helps him or harms him. That's something I'm going to have an eye on. And obviously the other thing is the Brandt and Bellingham partnership in midfield, how that is going to continue against Mainz. Dortmund will probably need a lot of early ball winning and some counter pressing. So I'm hoping that they can improve on that, which is hard to do during an international break where everyone is scattered throughout Europe or the globe even. And but I really hope that this is a subject, because I don't want to see Dortmund run into too many counterattacks, and I think Mainz are a team that can do that quite well, as they've shown before. So I don't know. It can obviously also just be the sort of game where Dortmund just break Mainz early, and it's going to be like 3-0 after at halftime. It can happen. Mainz are quite solid, quite sturdy at the back, but then again, if Dortmund have a tactical ploy, then they can get behind them quite easily. And with Mainz's somewhat hampered backline, maybe there are a couple of lack of automatism in the Mainz side where Dortmund can bank on. Maybe, I don't know, but it's going to be probably, if I had to guess, not the most easy on the eye game, because I feel like both teams have some adjusting to do, and maybe so the first 20 to 30 minutes or so might be a bit of patchwork. I think we've seen this quite a lot this season from Dortmund, that they had a slow start and only later in the game really blossomed, also through substitutions. I don't know if Hazard can come on up as a substitute, but I think when he's been brought on, he has helped Dortmund quite a bit. I think the Gladbach game is maybe the best example for that. Otherwise, I'm not entirely sure who even will be off the bench. If Meunier can play, okay, Wolf will play, and maybe Knauf will play if Hazard can't. But otherwise, I'm not really seeing Rose making use of all his 5 substitutions. So, I'm anxiously optimistic about this game, if that makes sense. I don't know about you, Lars, but if I had to pick a scoreline prediction, I think Dortmund will win this 3-1 again, which is, I think, the scoreline from the last meeting as well, where it was Guerrero, Reus, and Brandt who all scored, and then I think Quaison scored like a penalty in stoppage time.
I think Mainz have been kind of giant killers under Svensson. If I'm not mistaken, they beat Bayern last season and definitely beat Leipzig on matchday 1 this season, while being absolutely ravaged by COVID. I think Mainz had like 15 outfield players in the matchday squad, and at least a handful of those basically had no Bundesliga experience, so were all from their second side. Having said that, I think even given Dortmund's personnel situation, you just can't pick against them at home against a team like Mainz. So I'm going with a box standard 2-1 home win for Dortmund.
I'll take it, especially with Champions League football on Tuesday, where we shift our attention now to. Ajax obviously top of the group in Group C after a 5-1 win in Lisbon against Sporting, and then a 2-0 win against Besiktas. Obviously, they are right now also first in the Eredivisie, ahead of PSV with a ridiculous goal difference of +28, even though they lost their most recent game 1-0 against Utrecht. So yeah, they've scored 30 goals and conceded only 2, which is an impressive feat, even if it's just or only the Dutch league, as people say. I think it's that's speaks still of a really good team right now. Sebastian Aller, one of their strikers, is the leading goal scorer in the Champions League with 5 goals. So that's pretty much all about I have left to say about Ajax. Obviously, they're a really good team, and it's not going to be easy to go to the Johan Cruyff Arena and beat Ajax like Dortmund did. What was it, 2012? I think, when they went there and won 4-1, where Marco Reus and Mario Götze combined for a really good game, and Lewandowski also had a really good game. Probably one of the funnest away days for Dortmund in the Champions League, because it was such a good game for the entire 90 minutes. So, Lars, what can we expect this time?
I mean, if it's anywhere as good as back then, a lot, because I think that game has a sneaky good shout for being one of the 3 or 4 best performances under Jürgen Klopp, alongside the win against Real Madrid in the Champions League semifinals, and the absolute best game, no question in my mind, under Jürgen Klopp was the cup win over Bayern, but that's kind of a tangent. What to expect right now, I mean, given that we don't even know who's going to be available for Dortmund on Saturday, it's kind of hard to talk about a game on Tuesday. I think both teams, from a statistical standpoint, can basically consider themselves in the knockout stages already. I mean, obviously, if Dortmund beat Ajax twice or Ajax beat Dortmund twice, then maybe Besiktas or Sporting get back into it. But, given the state of the group right now, you would pretty much put your money on both teams advancing to the knockout stages. So this seems like a straight fight for the top spot, which in theory gives you the better or
I was just going to ask,
opponent.
is it desirable?
Yeah, I mean, who's to say after 2 match days who's going to end up second? I mean, I think over the last few years it seems like things have evened out so much over the best, I don't know, handful or half dozen or whatever clubs in Europe, that it's basically can be pretty much the same. But then again, you look back onto last year, and I don't know how many other teams outside of Sevilla, Dortmund would have been favorites for in the round of the last 16. So,
well, obviously you want to win your group so you can avoid Sheriff Tiraspol in the knockout stage, since they are also top of group. Presumably, could Dortmund face Bayern already in the round of 16? I'm not even. I think it used to be not.
the quarterfinals, but
I think that's only quarterfinals, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you still want to win the group, even if your opponent might not be too much easier, just because it means you had better results, get more money, and winning or being better in the Champions League is always desirable. So
yeah, it's more fun.
I don't know that you don't necessarily have to workshop getting second for an easier opponent or whatever.
So you're saying it's not the Russian Grand Prix where you want to finish in second place so you can be first after turn 1. Is what you're saying. Anyway,
yeah,
more tangents.
That was 100%. You absolutely read my mind from however many miles away, Stefan. So presumably this is going to be a straight fight for the group win. So that would usually tend to mean somewhat cagey matches in the direct heads up. But I think from what we can tell from Ajax over the last few years, and I mean, still Erik ten Hag as head coach, it's still, Tadic and a lot of these other guys that have basically been playing for them for the last few years, some of them during that run to the Champions League semi-final when they were beaten at the death by Tottenham, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think that Ajax or the Ajax DNA necessarily lends itself to games being cagey and calculated. I mean, I only watched them in the simulcast of the first match day against Sporting, and that, I mean, at the end of the day, it was a shellacking of Sporting away from home at the hands of Ajax. But I think basically the commentator said at some point that it could have been 4-4 because Sporting also had quite a few chances, and Ajax scored basically with every other shot, especially Alea, who scored a quadruple on his Champions League debut, because obviously he was at Frankfurt and West Ham before, so that's not a lot of Champions League minutes you're going to get there. I mean, I'm kind of assuming that Dortmund and Ajax, just because they are two of the least controlled teams, it feels like, of the better Champions League sides, if that makes sense. So given that we can possibly assume that, I think it's going to be two fun games from like an outsider's perspective, but I think it's basically useless for us to make too many assumptions, given we have no clue who's going to be available for Dortmund, basically.
Yeah, and we're not entirely sure who will be available for Ajax too. I mean, they right now have a bit of a goalkeeper trouble, right? I think that they might have to play the third goalkeeper. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to this game because it's such a toss-up to me. Because first of all, I'm looking forward to this game because I think this is one of the rare occasions where Dortmund actually have the luxury to have fewer possession and play on a counterattack, which doesn't happen too often. So and the pitch quality in the arena in Amsterdam is usually always good. So that lends itself for a good game of football. You know, it shouldn't be a potato field like it was in Istanbul. So those are things I consider and do look forward to be honest. And then, of course, just the way Ajax play, you know, sort of attacking football. It's 4-3-3, and, they will have their three attackers. And obviously, as per usual, it's about who is winning the battles in midfield, yada yada. But I'm really looking forward to it because I think Dortmund will be tested in a way they're rarely tested, because they will have to endure a long distance of possession by the opponent, and I am really intrigued to find out how they will react to that, because this season so far they haven't reacted to it well. I think they have sort of return to their shell, like in the Favre days. There's often a very passive style where they have just sort of huddled up around their own area, and the two strikers are not really starting to press way beyond their or way before rather their own halfway line or the halfway line, and that's something I want to see change. I want Dortmund to be a bit more on the front foot when they don't have the ball. I want them to press a little harder. But in order to do that, you need coordination, you need fit players. And those two are, things that I'm doubting right now a bit, because Dortmund have so much turnover in their team right now that I'm not entirely sure how they will ever really build this sort of level of chemistry to succeed in a good pressing style. So I have to see. I don't even know how hard Rose is working on that, whether these are issues they're addressing, but it's still something I'm looking forward to. And then, of course, as I just said, at least there will be a lot of counter-attacking situations, and whether Dortmund will make the most of it. If you think back to the cup win against Leipzig, for example, that was a game where Dortmund did have a lot of success on the counter-attack, and I have a hunch it could be similar to this game. Maybe Ajax will create a couple more scoring opportunities, but knowing Ajax and when I usually watch them, there are a lot of things, but clinical usually is not one of them. So I was a bit surprised when you said they were against Sporting, though I think if you score 5 goals in the Champions League, you usually are very clinical. So yeah, I'm looking really forward to this game, and I have no idea whether Dortmund come out as winners or losers, and whether Dortmund will be shellacked or shellack Ajax. I feel like it can really go either way. Lars, what's your prediction for that game?
For the sake of having a prediction, I'm going with a 2-2 draw.
All right. That's almost as good as my prediction, because I was going for a 3-3 draw. I think there will be lots of goals, and I hope I'm not going to be proven wrong. Is there anything else you want to say on the Ajax subject? Highlight any players they have?
No.
Okay. I was going to say I really like Neres and Tadic, but, I think everyone really knows who they are. And, of course, we have to watch out for Davy Klaassen. And Aller, I think, has scored a couple against Dortmund before as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think we should just leave it here and just talk about those games on Thursday next week. So Lars, in the meantime, please tell our listeners where to follow you on the interwebs.
Follow me or don't on Twitter at Lars Pollmann.
Awesome. You can follow me at Stefan on Twitter and Yellowwallpod, or at Yellowwallpod rather, on Twitter and Facebook if you want to follow all of us. And you can subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts, which is YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. And if you want to contribute financially to this podcast, go to our Patreon, which you can find on patreon.com/theyellowwall, where you can become an episode sponsor if you will. And that's it for today. Thank you as always for listening, and goodbye.